Welcome to Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. This show is heard on WBCQ The Planet every Monday and Thursdays afternoon, or I should say evening, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Monday, and on Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, heard all over the world. Also, not only is it on WBCQ, but you can go to our YouTube channel. And I don't upload all the shows, but I'll definitely upload this one. And we also have a podcast. Podomatic is our flagship. We also are on Spotify, Amazon, and a whole bunch of others. It's brought to you by Camp Constitution, which, among other things, runs a week-long family camp. And our camp is coming right up July 14th to the 19th. There's still some space available. Visit the website, campconstitution.net, for more information. We also have weekend retreats, family retreats, ladies' retreats, and all kinds of activities on a yearly basis. So, again, our website, you look at our calendar, and we have an incredible amount of resources for patriots, Christians. If you go to our downloads, you'll see all these great information. Our Blumenfeld archive is a wonderful resource for educators, homeschoolers, and literally millions of views since we started uploading the late Sam Blumenfeld's incredible resources. Well, we have a guest, not in studio because I don't really have a studio. I'm doing this on my kitchen table or kitchen counter, I should say. But we have a common friend, excuse me, William Brown, Bill Brown from the Save the Persecuted Christians. And we had Bill speak at our camp with his lovely wife one year, and he had all the banners. I was hoping to pull a few banners, and my wife had borrowed the vehicle with the banners, so I couldn't get any pull it, put just for good. So what we're talking about. But Save the Persecuted Christians is I think it's an international ministry. They bring awareness and action to Christians that are persecuted, mainly in Muslim and communist countries, but even here in the United States, not to the extent that it's happening in other parts of the world. And we're having, so we are scheduling two events here in New Hampshire the end of this month, June of 2024. One, actually, Maine, one in Lebanon, Maine, which is right over the border from New Hampshire and right next to Rochester. And that's going to be Friday at 7 p.m. The 28th, I believe, is that Friday, the last Friday of June, at the First Parish Congregational Church on Central Road in Lebanon. And then Saturday night at my home church, or my church, the Alton Community Christian Church in Alton, New Hampshire, 20 Church Street. And that's going to be 7 p.m. So we're going to have the banners on display. There'll be, I think I get about 15 or 20 of them. I don't have one that says U.S. persecution, but I think they should be making one up. And I'm also going to have William Brown, but Bill suggested that we bring Phil. And so he connected me with Phil. And pronounce your last name because I don't want to mess it up. It's a Greek last name. So
Zodhiates.
Zodhiates, thank you very much. I get in trouble. We have a camp counselor, and she has a Greek name, and I have a half Greek wife. I should know how to pronounce these things. But anyway, Phil, thank you so much for coming on to Camp Constitution Radio, and we're looking forward to and spending some time in fellowship with you and your wife when you come up here at the end of this month. But and you have a book out that talks about your ordeal. But before that, a little bit of background about yourself and your ministry.
Well, my background is I've been a businessman for years, helping Christian organizations to grow and primarily using the medium of direct mail. We're basically fundraisers, and we're responsible for a lot of the fundraising mail that you get from various Christian organizations and conservative groups and candidates. So that's what I've done all my life. That alone made me a target, but this whole case and why I was targeted for persecution, it's a lot broader than that, and it's definitely we're fighting against Satan himself, against the evils of this world, and anyway, I don't know what else you want me to tell you.
You have been married for what, 40 plus years?
Yes, my wife is Kathy, and we've been married. Actually, we just celebrated about a week ago our 44th, I think it was
God bless
44th,
you. That's great.
44th anniversary. So
That's
we have
great.
six children, and Our second to youngest just had a kidney transplant over the weekend. So his name's
Ooh,
Josiah.
wow.
So
Oh,
he's
wow. Pray for,
he's believe it
yeah.
or not, he's home already.
Oh,
So
and boy, the medical technology is so amazing. It's
yeah,
advanced so much. That's almost a death sentence today. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, it was like the chances of surviving, and it's
right.
amazing. And where are you originally from?
I'm originally from the New York City area. I live in Virginia. I've lived in Virginia for probably about almost 40 years.
And being in the direct mail conservative business, again, you're raising money to fund the Patriot Movement, the Christian organizations, as you said, already put you a target. But you had a very interesting ordeal that led you to do a 3-year jail sentence. And this is
That's
what I
correct.
mean by, we look at Christian persecution, and you see where in some countries you're executed, your churches are burned for Bibles. I mean, North Korea, it's a death sentence to be a Christian in North Korea. In
Right.
Muslim countries, and some Muslim countries, the oppression isn't as bad. I don't know if it's as bad in Turkey, but Saudi Arabia, forget it. If you are a convert to Christianity, you're executed. Afghanistan, and then many other, even in Mexico. Mexico, they think, oh well, it's a Catholic country, really. I mean, they just recently allowed celebration of Christmas. A lot of people don't know that. And then our northern border, Canada, they're extremely hostile to Christianity. Who was the gentleman, the pastor? I didn't meet him in person, but I was on conference calls with him a few times. He was from Poland originally, Pastor Paul, PAW. I forget I can't remember his last name, but he was arrested and he was actually facing some serious jail time. And thankfully, he won his case, but he spent some time in jail. And I'll never forget in the height of the lockdown, the police came to his church and he's got this like 5 or 6 minute video. He says, Nazis aren't welcome here. Go away, Nazis. No Nazis in this church.
Yeah.
It didn't sit well. Pastor Pollock, I think that's his last name. Um,
Hmm.
and anyway, just a courageous man. And I told him that he was a real hero to me because so few members of the clergy and even Christians stood up in the face of tyranny. And in the United States, I know that, I mean, for years, if you were a young child and you brought a Bible to an elementary school or a middle school, the teachers probably would have give you too much trouble, but your fellow students would have probably harassed you, right? No, that's not vicious persecution, but you experienced something far worse. And of course, today, this month is so-called Pride Month. We're
Right.
supposed to be pride of being proud to be homosexuals, which is in clear contradiction of the
Yeah.
Scripture, the Word of God. And I want to qualify that Jesus came to redeem people. He came to redeem homosexuals as well as all sinners. And it's a sin. And we have an obligation to, I think it's called tough love. If you have somebody who's a friend or family member, and because of their sexual orientation, you now embrace that really, I call it a death style, and say, like, hey, I love you, but you need to repent. I have a young a friend that I met during the lockdown, and he was a very courageous guy, black man, outspoken, Trump supporter, conservative, but he's a homosexual, and he's rejected. He used to be a student at Liberty University, and he said, I don't believe in God. Because of his homosexuality, and I just said, brother, I didn't say brother. I said, look, I love you. I respect you. I'm going to pray for you. And that's really all you could do. But it's not that we hate. And the left wants to say this narrative that the evil Christians persecuted homosexual, persecuted gays, and now you. But you see, my position is that when you tolerate a little bit of sin, you get a whole lot of sin.
So,
So, share
well,
your thoughts on it.
yeah. Well, the what happened to me started back in 2009. I got a call out of the blue from a woman I had never met. She had been a former lesbian who came to Christ and abandoned her lifestyle while a lesbian and in a civil union in Vermont, which was the first state that
That's
allowed
right.
that sort of thing. They were actually both women were from Virginia, but they moved to Vermont to get a civil union. Lisa Miller was the woman's name that called me, and she had a child through artificial insemination. The other woman actually had wanted very little to do with the child, refused to adopt her, and so forth. But when Lisa abandoned that civil union and moved back to Virginia with her child, uh, kind of, I guess you could say, all hell broke loose for her, and there was the ACLU and Southern Poverty Law Center saw this as a precedent-setting case that would basically nullify the marriage amendments in Virginia and therefore throughout the United States. So it was a long battle through the courts. I got a call, and this happened back in the originally in the early 2000s. I got a call in 2009 from this desperate woman asking for help. I invited her to come visit me, and she explained how during courts ordered visitations, she was, and there were unsupervised visitations. Her child was evidently being abused by
Mm.
Janet Jenkins, and
What type of abuse was this? Was it
well, it was
sexual abuse or
all kinds
physical
of
abuse?
abuse, but the sexual
Mental
abuse
abuse.
particularly, it
Yeah.
was mental
Yeah.
abuse, emotional abuse, and most predominantly sexual abuse. And her mother was at wit's end because either uh, the court was basically mandating the sexual abuse of her child by order by they don't want to hear anything about the sexual abuse because it would be this was their precedent-setting case that was going to nullify the marriage amendments. So they buried that, and uh, about 3 years later, in 2012, I was hit with a civil suit along with Liberty Counsel, who was her attorneys, and a number of other. Liberty University was involved. They were named as a defendant. My daughter, my company, Response Unlimited. So
Well, I want to
anyway,
mention a shout out to Liberty Counsel. They're the ones that had took our case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court and won nine
right.
zero. So
Well,
yeah, I want
they're
to
a
give them a shout out.
co-defendant in this case. Yep. And so anyway, we've been fighting this battle. But after they filed a civil case against me, and were able to get all the discovery, and they fed that illegally to the Department of Justice and the FBI. And my prosecution was actually mandated by the White House, the Obama White House, and so they came after me
Wow.
criminally. I was arrested in 2014, went to trial in 2016. All throughout this, I never thought I'd be convicted. I gave a lot of credence to the U.S. justice system, but I was in fact convicted, and I had a lot of soul searching to do as I walked into that federal prison for my 3-year sentence. Why God is this happening? But the Lord had a
Yeah.
plan, Raw. If you read my
Did
book,
you serve the whole 3 years?
I served my entire sentence. In you never serve your full sentence. The only ones with exception are some of these sex offenders. But my charge was aiding and abetting an international parental kidnapping. But there was
Jeez.
actually a clause in the statute under which I was convicted that said a parent had every right to leave the country if there was any type of abuse going on. If they were fleeing a pattern of abuse or an incident of abuse. So there was actually no crime committed. This was a vendetta. This was political. They were coming after us to set precedents. And so
Let me just interject a second here. If it was a if it was a male that she had fled and
absolutely
he was engaged in abuse, they would have given you a badge. You would have been a hero
right.
because you were
Yeah,
saving. Yeah, but
right.
because it was a lesbian, even though she was not the biological mother, and she said she had no interest in the daughter
Exactly.
until, well, I shouldn't even use the word daughter because she's not. We can't
Right.
recognize that as legitimate. But then all of a sudden she said, okay, I can get back at her. My former civil union partner. I'll get back at her through the daughter.
So they went. Well, I wasn't the only one that went to prison over this. There were two other gentlemen. There were Amish Mennonites. I introduced Lisa Miller to the Amish Mennonite community in hopes that they would conceal her, and they actually sent her out of the country to
Wow.
Central America, and which was a good thing because they couldn't find her. And so after Isabella, her daughter, became of age, they surrendered themselves to the embassy in the country where they were. and they were extradited to the United States. And Lisa went to jail. Uh, there's other two gentlemen, the Amish Mennonite, that helped them. They were both one was a missionary, one was a pastor here locally. They both went to federal prison as well. Uh, the Anyway, after all the criminal stuff was the civil case was put on stay till after all the criminal stuff. So the civil case is actually coming up in September. And what I have learned, is that this case now, we figured they would drop it after Obergefell, but what it's really about is they are trying to push through the legitimization of pedophilia, adult child sex, and
Yep.
that's really what their intention is. And we'd love as many people to come to Burlington, Vermont, and at the beginning of September to support us and expose what they're trying to do, because very few people know. So
Yeah,
I
it's real.
document all of this and tell all my experiences. It's in the book that I have. It's available on Amazon. It's Innocent: The Price One Man Paid for Doing What Is
You
Right.
you have a copy of the book to hold up so people
Uh,
can
I don't. Hey, Kathy, can you grab me a copy of my book? Kathy, I'm trying to get my wife's attention. No, she's not listening. Uh, yeah. Hey, Kathy, can you grab a copy of my book, please? Okay, thank you. All right, it's coming.
Good. Yeah,
Uh,
that's visuals always good to have.
yeah. So anyway, uh, it's uh, it's been a long ordeal. It's been now going on 15 years, 16 years. Uh,
Jeez.
and but it's been a blessing to go through what I've gone through, and and Peter tells us that if you suffer for the sake of righteousness, you are blessed. Jesus himself said that we are
That's
blessed
right
if
in the
we're
Beatitudes,
persecuted.
yeah.
So here's a book, Innocent Price One Man Paid for Doing What Is Right. And so it's available on Amazon. I appreciate if people read it, they leave a review. But this was actually my journal in prison. It was excerpted from my journal in prison, which is online at Romans828.com. And you have to spell out Romans 8 and then the numeral 28.com.
EIGHT 28. Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh. And also, if you go to 419fund.com, you can get updates to what's happening, and also donate if you like to our legal expenses. This has hit my family and business with over $1 million in legal costs. So it's pretty much uh, hit us pretty hard financially.
It's
So,
interesting, though, in the light of the Trump conviction, 34 counts that should not have even been brought up. The left is saying, "Oh, the rule of law. Oh, the system works." Well, it's really a pretty broken system.
yeah.
I
Well, I
remember
sat
years
my
ago. I just want to mention years ago, I took a course. I was at a junior college back in the early '80s, and the attorney who was the instructor, he said, "In the United States, you have a chance at justice." He didn't say you will get it. He said, most countries you have no chance or little chance. At least here you have a chance. And unfortunately, if you're a Christian conservative, the
yeah,
odds are stacked against you because you
yes,
have a very hostile, and more so today than ever before. You have a very hostile, you have all these appointed judges, and for the most part, they're sitting on the bench for life. And I'm not
mm-hmm.
necessarily against that. It said that we got to get people elected who will appoint judges that will be constitutionalists, and we do have some. Thank God that we have some half decent Supreme Court justices, and they still render some bad opinions or decisions. But it's really relentless. And there's so many people that I know. There's a gentleman that I know. He was an officer. He spent time in Afghanistan. He went down to the January 6th event. He didn't hurt anybody. He went in. He was waved in by Capitol Police. He was with a friend. They left when they were asked to leave or told to leave. I think there was a little altercation that he broke up, and
Mm-hmm.
he's facing 20 years. and
Yeah.
he's having trouble finding an attorney that will take his case. And I'm thinking of all the injustices. I mean, there are murderers, literal murderers that get, they get, they'll give in 20-year sentences, they're out 2 or 3 years later. But because of his crime was the fact that he was a Trump supporter and he happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And there are people still, I understand, still languishing in that filthy prison with guards that
Hmm.
hate them. And so this
Yeah.
isn't the country that we thought it was, unfortunately, where people are treated. No, there's even if you had it's a human system, so there's accidents, things may go wrong. It's not a perfect system, but
Right.
it's really when you look at imagine if my judge, if I'm facing a judge who happened to be an atheist and a big Biden supporter, and or just that's what Trump was facing. I mean, it was like he's no chance. They should have just
Right.
the first day of the trial, I said, guilty. The jury just vote him guilty so we can save some time. It's ironic. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And these same leftists who would, oh, the system works. No one's above the law. 2 or 3 years ago, they were calling this country a kangaroo. Kangaroo was what were they calling it? Well, the kangaroo courts, and they were making a reference to us being a banana republic. So it's
Well,
just amazing.
I sat in my courtroom during my almost 2 week criminal trial, and that's the same thought that I kept having: is this isn't what I expected. This is like a kangaroo court. I thought I was in Venezuela or something. It was crazy. So
Yeah,
I can definitely relate to what President Trump went through.
I was arrested with Operation Rescue back in 1988. It was
Okay.
and we were going to be at a abortion mill in Boston, but we decided to change tactics at the last minute. We went down to Providence, Rhode Island, about 45 miles south, and I drove down with 2 or 3 ladies, and we were in front of the place, and they were just clearing the place out. And I was asked by one of the organizers of Operation Rescue if I would bring my vehicle and kind of block the driveway. They said they'll tow your car, we'll pay for the tow. I said, okay. I probably should have thought a little, give it a little more thought. I said, okay. And so I did, and I took a right turn into the driveway, and a policeman who was in front of me, but not in my line, I was taking the right turn. I'm doing 5 miles an hour. He said, don't go down there. Well, I went down there and I got out of the vehicle and I had handbags with me because I didn't want the ladies to lose their handbags. And I was tackled, arrested. They thought I had bombs. I don't know why would think I had bombs. I mean, all the people around. And I'm in this filthy jail cell, and I'm there for about 3 or 4 hours. And I was charged with a felonious assault that I tried to run the policeman down twice, not just once. That I came back and tried to ram him again. I was facing some serious jail time.
Yeah.
And our pro bono attorney said, would you plead guilty to a lesser felony? I said, I can't do that. So I get to the court, and the guy sitting next to me, he's going off to jail for armed robbery for 15 years. No big deal. I'll get a little, I'll do it. Standing in my head, and then they come to me, and thankfully the policeman never showed up. But there was no witness. I couldn't find any eyewitnesses, and that
Hmm.
was my word against his word. And man, I was looking at some serious jail time. But thankfully, the policeman never showed up, and they said continue without a finding, and that was that. The case was dismissed a year later. So
Well,
I can understand.
if you
Oh,
look
go
at
ahead.
the instances of persecution in Acts and other places in Scripture, even Jesus himself, you know, they were false charges. They were fabricated. They brought up things, that were not true. And we're coming to the point where the Bible tells us, well, in First Timothy, Paul says, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. There's no ifs,
Persecuted. Yeah.
ands, and doubts.
Yeah.
Persecution
Yeah.
is coming to this country, and they're not going to persecute us. Well, they're going to persecute us because we're believers, because we're Christians, but that's not going to be the charges that they bring against us. The charges they bring against us, as they brought against me, are going to be false charges. They're going to be lies, and they're going to bring up stuff just to get us convicted. And we're not going to get fair trials, but this is going to happen. And I'm here to say that, I spent about 30 months in federal prison, but it's doable. And it's something that that God gives us the grace to go through. He doesn't promise to keep us from persecution and suffering, but he promises to take us through. And so I'm here to say that, do not fear them. Stand your ground, and God's going to be with you every step of the way as long as you don't abandon him.
Let me ask you your experiences in jail. Did you have the general respect from most of the inmates that you interacted with?
Yes, predominantly most across the board. Once they found out and believed what I was there for,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
yeah, I had respect of everybody, pretty much. Not so necessarily with the guards, but with the
yeah,
prisoners.
yeah. Because I'm thinking about Trump. If he's going to jail, he probably could be running that jail in a couple of days. I tell you, if I'm an inmate and I got a billionaire former president, I'm going to protect that guy.
Well, it was pretty amazing because the day after I got there, the Lord gave me a ministry. Guys started coming up to me saying, "I'm a new Christian. You're here to teach me."
Wow, wow,
And
isn't that
so
something, huh?
immediately we had a Bible study started. And then eventually I was there during COVID,
What jail
and
was this, by the way? What prison was
I
this?
was in Ashland Federal Correctional Institution in Ashland, Kentucky.
Okay.
So, which is a low prison. But when COVID hit and we were confined to our units, we weren't allowed outside for months and months. Matter of fact, for a
Wow.
good while, we were confined to our cells. But there was a young fellow who dramatically, he was the biggest druggie in the whole unit, and he came to the Lord right before COVID, and then COVID hit. We were confined to our cells. We weren't allowed outside. He went down and talked to the guard, and he said, "Hey, can I go study the Bible with Zodhiates?" And he explained what happened to him, and so the guard gave him permission. And then eventually he started bringing others, and we had some nights 14, 15 guys crowded into 7 by 9 foot cell, if you could picture that, studying the
Wow.
Bible, worshiping, praying,
That's
and
amazing.
oh, it was a blessing. We did that every single night for almost a year.
Well, I would say that not every Christian who stands their ground is going to go to jail. At the same time, we serve a powerful God that will deliver us from these kinds of things. At the same time, it really sets the left back or the atheist left back because we're making a stand for Christ and it actually helps our case. And that's the church grew during its most when there was more oppression
Right.
when there's the martyrs, So what was the expression? Martyrs' blood is the seed of the church. So
Right.
we've really had it pretty good for as the Christian church. And the sad thing is, it's not that there are a lot of Bible believing churches that are in favor of the homosexual agenda. Is that they're afraid to speak out against it,
Mhm.
and they were worried about their little four corners and stay. And but if you don't speak out for righteousness, you're gonna you will not be immune to its abuses unless you speak out. And
Right.
there's a lot more of us, and even people who aren't necessarily. There are a lot of people who are sympathetic to our position. They may not be church attendees or Bible believing Christians, but they're sympathetic, and that's a great missionary field too, right there. And I
Right.
know that you get some of these. I know there was a case in Worcester. There was a church. The pastor Casey would not shut the church down, and he was holding services during the course of. And I was going to interview him, and he said, "Hell, I can't go on. I'm about to be arrested and go to jail." Well, he had these bikie guys said, "Hey, we'll," and there was a lot of lefties that were harassing him, and he said that they offered their bodyguard services. They weren't believers at that point. He said, but within a short time, they all became believers. These tough bikie dudes that were guarding the church, and he said his church doubled in that time. So
Yes.
God really rewarded him.
Well, that was my experience in prison. Is
Wait, we
the
only get we get about 30 seconds left. How can the
okay?
listeners get a hold of you if they want to
Uh,
learn more about you? Listeners
well,
and viewers, I should say.
well, you can go to 419 Fund. That stands for Philippians 419, and contact them, and through that, also you can it's P Zodhiates at voice for the children.com.
And
You
I'll
can
put this
contact me there.
information in the box underneath on the YouTube version too. So anyway, we got to
Okay.
let you go. We want to thank you for your being on the show. We want to thank
Thank
you for
you.
listening and viewing. Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. And until next week, may God richly bless you.
Thank you.